I won't begin my presentation by stating the obvious to you. We all know that climate change is one of the most pressing issues of the contemporary world. We all know that it'll impact my generation and all those that follow us in the coming decades, and we know that millions of people around the world are already facing the consequences of a warming climate and the inaction that has led to its degradation. However, I would like to begin with a preface that the notion of individual action and responsibility being the sole solution to this international state of an emergency is a blatant lie and a misguided attempt to conserve the natural world. What we often do not consider when we see large-scale and widespread misinformation being spread alongside the release of new scientific evidence is the way in which young people will respond. As a demographic, they often scramble to find ways in which to change their daily lives and reduce their personal carbon footprints. However, we often also do not consider the large-scale impacts of our grassroots shifts. Unless conducted in tandem with systemic change, personal action is a pin drop in the ocean, particularly when these actions of personal virtue are based upon a concept popularized by British Petroleum, one of the 100 largest corporations responsible for producing 71% of global carbon emissions. In order to understand this, there is seemingly one solution: environmental education. Now, environmental education can arise in a variety of different forms, with varying degrees of impact and accuracy, ranging from the referencing of the enhanced greenhouse effect in chemistry and geography courses, to the creation of single-issue subjects such as earth and environmental sciences that are offered in many formalized Western curriculums, and the creation of the new natural history GCSE in the British educational system, all the way to the creation of whole specialized secondary education programs, such as those being pioneered by the United World College movement across the world, particularly the Climate Action Leadership Diploma at PearsonCollegeUWC, the Sustainable Business Management Program at UWC Maastricht, and the Systems Transformation Pathway at Atlantic College. Now, at surface value, the implementation of each of these initiatives seems to be a step into the right direction, and they are. However, they all share one common shortfalling. They continue to perpetuate the same narratives that are pointed out to be flaws in the modern environmental movement by the very young people that they are meant to be serving. They silo learning about the environment to those who opt for them, with this choice requiring the prerequisite of three things: either having been exposed to the environment in a positive manner, having had access to political literacy education, or having few other struggles or injustices present in your life, meaning that you're able to prioritize environmental degradation as one of your primary concerns. What we really need is an all-encompassing and holistic overview of education as we currently know it to exist. The British educational model and all those based upon it are no longer fit for purpose. So young people must have access to a system that has been redesigned to best prepare them with the knowledge and skills that they require to pursue a just and sustainable future. And the fact is, this simply cannot happen through limited and elective courses. Whilst in the United Kingdom, I campaigned for an organisation called Teach the Future, or TTF, as you'll see behind me, who called for the comprehensive incorporation of the climate and ecological emergency into the national curriculum, alongside the green retrofitting of the public school estate to allow for a reduction in the hypocrisy of teaching about sustainability on unsustainable campuses. We acknowledge the flaws in the existing models of climate education and sought to combine both overt and covert pedagogies, referencing the climate emergency and its associated injustices explicitly, as well as having this theme integrated as a golden thread for every available area of the curriculum to support young people in being able to vocalize their fears, opinions, and thoughts about their future and be best enfranchised to take action surrounding them. There is a fundamental misconception that existing models of climate education prepare young people for what seems to be the impossible task of protecting our planet and liberating all living beings who call it their home. They paint the climate crisis as an issue that we can sit back, observe, and absorb knowledge about from a projector screen in a classroom. With these lessons being founded in factual and statistical evidence, rather than experiential learning the majority of the time. What I would like to ask you today is, how does this spur action? Does this not simply encourage hopelessness with little avenues for solutions? And how can we expect my generation, once empowered with this information, to simply wait to climb the career ladder before they see meaningful change happen. We are past the point of no return. We know that greedy corporations and corrupt governmental figures are tipping the existence of humanity over the edge. So we no longer have time for our education to simply exist within these formalized settings. Young people cannot be expected to just sit with the impending state of our generation and do nothing about it. So our education must be founded in action, because our window of opportunity to make meaningful change and protect all that we know is rapidly dwindling. We must act now, and in order for this to happen, students must take to the streets. I began organising at the age of 11, having been exposed to a worsening environment in the West Country of England, the current state of our political system, and our trajectory of continuous economic growth from an early age. I attended my first climate strike in 2018 after the proposed construction of an incinerator in my grandparents' home, where I was possibly naive in believing that we could simply ask our local authority to make changes, and they would, which is crazy considering that is their entire job. As I progressively became more involved in movement building and organising direct action, I began to realise that working within the realms of the system was often demoralising and ineffective. I distinctly recall attending a meeting with my local council one Wednesday after school, dressed in a shirt and dress pants, where I pleaded with my local representatives to protect our county's peat bogs, considering how important they were to maintaining our local carbon sink. I was smiled at by my head of council. I was shrugged off and simply disregarded as another young person who didn't have enough real-life experience to have any say over decision-making processes. It was at this point that I began to realize that to make reform, we must not always be polite. In fact, it is almost imperative that we are not. To be polite is to conform to the status quo and operate in a way that is deemed acceptable by the very institutions that are leading us towards an early extinction, with schools being the primary materialization of these expectations. With rigid curriculums, class rankings, and grading against strict rubrics, young people were pitched against each other and forced into unhealthy cycles of competition, producing messaging that is counterproductive to what they must learn to support our society in progressing past the era of the Anthropocene that we currently find ourselves within. Instead, we must apply pressure externally in acknowledging that our systems operate in the exact way that they are intended to do so, often against our favour and for the pockets of the privileged and the wealthy. I believe there are valuable lessons that young people can learn from being involved in protesting and organising that we would be unable to attain through environmental education taught within the confines of the walls of the classroom. And it is the beauty of these that I would like to conclude with today, leading me on to my final point: a curriculum for radical youth. These are three key messages that I believe must be incorporated into the narrative surrounding youth education in order for us to be adequately equipped to tackle the enormous challenge which seems to be a never-ending fight with the system, as well as supporting us in shifting towards a position of radical love, equity, and the conservation of the natural world in line with the needs of the most marginalized and vulnerable in our society. Number one, we must learn the value of camaraderie and collaboration. It is imperative that we break down the systems of competition that are present within our education system, where young people believe they must fight against their peers to achieve better grades and access educational opportunities. Once we have created an environment in which they are able to learn about collaboration, where they're able to lean on each other, develop bases of solidarity, develop empathetic response, and learn the true value of leadership as being filling in the gaps in organization and providing support, rather than simply the dictatorial relationships that we are encouraged to partake in under hierarchy, we will be able to progress to the next two stages. And this is the exact environment that has been created in the protest movements that I've been a part of. Number two, we must learn the value of community resilience. Once we have taught young people that they are unable to compete with their peers, given that everything we do is reciprocal, we can begin to develop and strengthen the bonds within our communities that will be necessary in withstanding the hardships that will come with creating a better system, both for the people and planet. Often in organising, we have tangible aims. However, they are often not met for a variety of reasons. But once we understand the communities and the organizing bases that we are a part of are resilient and can withstand these. We understand that not meeting these goals is entirely okay. We can rebound, we can recuperate, we can rebound, we can recuperate, we can rebuild, and we can fight back stronger together as one. Leading me on to my third and final point. Young people must have access to practical skills-based learning. We know that in order for us to reorient our systems away from their flawed political and economic aims as they have in the current political climate, we must be interdisciplinary and equip young people with the skills that they need in order to transform all industries to become sustainable. By partaking in adaptable and reactive campaigning work, young people are exposed to microcosms of society that are present within protest movements, fulfilling roles and functions that must be fulfilled in order for them to ensure effective implementation of tactics and the achievement of their goals based on demands of protest movements. Following this hands-on practical experience, they are able to enter into the workplace with this newfound practical knowledge and support a just transition. These are the three key messages that I believe will lead us to a position where we're able to protect not only where we call home, but the home of all other species that we coexist alongside. Now, I won't end my presentation today by stating the obvious to you. We all know that climate change is the most pressing issue of the contemporary world. We know that it'll impact my generation and all those that follow us in the coming decades, and we know that millions of people around the world are already facing the consequences of a warming climate and the inaction that has led to its degradation. However, I will end with this. Young people can be the change that we need to see in the world. However, they must be made aware of the current and projected state of our environment and the way in which they can navigate our complex political systems. Currently, our classrooms are failing to prepare us for this enormous radical shift. So we must seek an alternative. We must unite, we must organize, and we must resist against the systems of violence and oppression that hold a grip over our communities and the land that we call home. And we will, because we have no other choice but to try. Thank you.